Well, speaking of products, I know that Cloud cover a lot of flour concentrates. Are you guys thinking about some of these other categories in the future? Things like beverages, edibles, categories that have a smaller market share but seem to be growing as far as percentage of overall sales. Are you guys looking at that, or are you going to stick to kind of the flour-based products?
Yeah. Right now the focus to date has been, flour, concentrates, and cartridges, right? Those are kind of our three major categories. I think we are interested in edibles as well as beverages. I think part of it has been, again, a bit of a brand strategy for us. First and foremost, particularly with Cloud Cover. Cloud Cover is exclusively focused on full spectrum products, right? So we aren't doing any straight distillate products. So even the cartridges we do are sauce cartridges, so they're mixing, some distillate to have the right consistency and to ensure that the cartridge smokes correctly with a full spectrum sauce that has all of the other cannabinoid and the original terpene profile of whatever variety it came from. Obviously, concentrates, same thing. Those are full spectrum offerings. And so, a straight distillate, say gummy, for example, has been not something that we're really focused on for the Cloud Cover brand. We want that to be, as part of its brand story, more about, cultivating high quality flower and then taking that high quality biomass from Cloud Cover plants and creating full spectrum Cloud Cover concentrates and cartridges, right? We are, though, now starting to explore those other categories and thinking about developing, a brand that would be more well suited to focus on what are often more distillate-based categories. Not to say that there aren't full-spectrum edible offerings. There are, but that's kind of how we've thought about that universe. And so I do think that at some point, in the next coming year or two, we will look at plays in that space. However, we're also trying to be mindful of not doing too many things at once and knowing really what we're good at. And I think our product quality in the categories we're in, the flour, the concentrates, and the carts, has been really well received. We're excited and continuing to hone our craft in those three areas. If and when we feel like we kind of got that down, then I think we will explore some of the other categories, and some of those other categories may also be areas where it makes sense to explore partnerships or collaborations and think about working with folks who have a ton of expertise in those categories, right? So it's another part of the kind of brand story now, is thinking about how do we work with other players in the industry that we respect, both from a product quality standpoint, but also from a cannabis culture standpoint, and use those to ideally elevate both brands, right? And so those are other kind of thinking that we're having right now, particularly as it relates to some of the other categories.
Yeah, that's a really good differentiation there, that you guys are really focused on the full spectrum sauce. And it is hard to capture in things like edibles and beverages, which are so often distillate. And I think even when brands are full spectrum, anecdotally from my own experience, I think a lot of it gets lost, some of that nuance that you get with like a flour-based product, whether it's concentrates or cartridges. Harder to capture there. And I know there's some new technology that's coming around. We're seeing some edible brands that are doing the nano emulsion, and
Yep.
it's supposed to be ingested in different ways and can capture more of that full spectrum effect that you might get from flour. That one of the reasons why everyone likes flour-based products so much. But it's early, I think, yet, and I think the consumer is not quite there yet either. But it's going to take new brands coming to market to really push those types of things. So it makes a lot of sense, if you're focused on more of a distillate type product, to kind of separate it from Cloud Cover, so it doesn't kind of dilute the brand itself, as people are know it for things like the full spectrum. Well, we'll look forward to seeing what you guys produce, and if it's new brands in these new categories, and there's still plenty of time. They're like, beverages is a very small category still. Edibles is pretty small with respect to things like flour, but certainly growing as new consumers come in. I'm sure there's opportunity there.
Definitely growing, and I will say I've tried a lot of products in some of those categories, and there's some great products out there. There's some really high quality stuff. So again, from our kind of starting base mentality here of producing high quality products, those are categories that we would like to be in. We just, we want to make sure we go in the right way with the right brand story and potentially where it makes sense, the right partnerships.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine with the retail component too, you get access to a lot of brands that are out there and work with those brands and can be partnerships long term as well.
Yep. Yeah, we carry a lot of third party brands that that we think are doing a great job.
Yeah. So I want to touch on markets. You guys are in Oregon, is where you started. I know you're in Michigan, and I believe it's is it Missouri? Is that?
Yeah, we're in Oregon, Michigan, Massachusetts, and Missouri. Those are
Massachusetts and Missouri, right?
Yep.
So one of the things that I find so interesting about this industry, and interesting maybe is a nice word for it, but is the fragmentation in these different legislative frameworks and just the different rules and how these markets kind of play out. Oregon is a highly competitive market. There's a lot of products, a lot of retailers.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, right. And I don't know if a lot of people, markets like California, not to say it's not competitive, it's very competitive in California, but you look at some of these limited license markets like Florida, where, vertically integrated operators, and there is some competition, but it's just not at that type of scale that you'd see in a market like Oregon or even, what Michigan is kind of shaping up to be. If you, had your way, like what's kind of your thought? Would you prefer a very limited license market, longer term? Would you prefer kind of what you've seen in markets like Oregon or maybe even Michigan as the model? Because they're all so different. So I'd love to hear, given your exposure to a number of them, medical and adult use, like what you like and don't like and what you'd like to see kind of going forward.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So, we launched in Oregon. Like you said, very competitive market. And I will say that I think the benefit of that is that it helped train us to be good operators and to produce high quality products. You can't be in a market like Oregon and just produce some middling, undifferentiated product, whatever that may mean for, whatever you produce, and get away with it, right? There's too much choice, there's too many options, there's a lot of competition, right? And so I think from that standpoint, it was great to go into a market like Oregon and really, kind of hone our craft, right? And learn how to be efficient and learn how to really be on top of everything, be consistent, be communicative, be good partners to our retail buyers, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was a tremendous experience for us. On the flip side, you look at a market like Missouri or Massachusetts, the competition is much more limited. And oftentimes, frankly, not in cloud cover, but in some of our competitors, we see that in their product quality, where people are getting away with selling, what I would consider to be swag or mids or whatever kind of, name you want to use for it, for ridiculous prices. And so, I think it allows some degree of laziness, frankly, for some operators when they're in really protected markets. From our point of view, I think we probably would say the middle is somewhere that makes sense. And what I mean by that is that, in Oregon, it's great, I think, because it's given consumers a lot of choice. On the same token, it's been very difficult for the industry, right? A lot of companies in Oregon have gone out of business or have had to scale back. It's can be fairly thin margins depending, again, on whether or not your product is actually differentiated. So I think it forces the kind of cream to rise to the top a little bit. But I would say that in that instance, that's probably gone a little bit too far on the spectrum in terms of maybe too many licenses, too many competitors that make it hard to really kind of manage a business, to an appropriate kind of margin profile, right? But yeah, I think somewhere in the middle is probably right. I also don't think you need to have, Florida has what, I think 22 of those vertical licenses, so there's 22 companies, and I hear from pretty much everybody I know in Florida that a lot of the quality out there is subpar, right? So I do think that from a health of an industry standpoint, somewhere that is a little bit more limited than at least the Oregon example is beneficial. But from the standpoint of ensuring that there's quality, reasonable price points, and consumers have ample choice, it also shouldn't be as restricted as you see in some of the Northeast and the Southeast states.
Thanks for joining CPG, the Cannabis Packaged Goods Podcast. For more information on Headset, visit headset.io.